$200 billion investment in AI.
That's huge.
So it's dropped from roughly 38 billion to 11, which is massive. Because Amazon has never bet that big on anything before. They lost 10% of their share price.
Wow. Check out his glow up. It's that time of year again. You know what time it is. It's the time that Andy Jassy writes a love letter to Zamir. It's actually his shareholder statement that he announces every year, and Zamir loves to read. And for anyone who hasn't, by the way, go look at our video from last year, probably link in the description, to when Zamir last ran through it, and check out his glow up. The man's been working, I'll tell you that. But Andy's written a letter to you.
He's written a letter to shareholders. He does it every year. And I do love to read this because I think it tells us a lot as sellers as to what we can expect to come from Amazon. And I think this year's one is so important for sellers to read.
And shareholders. All right. So what in particular? Tell us, what's the TLDR?
Sorry, guys, for anyone who doesn't know, who is Andy Jassy?
So, just in case you don't know who Andy Jassy is, other than being Zamir's pen pal, he is the CEO of
Yes. He took over from Jeff Bezos 5 years ago.
Whenever Jeff decided to peace out and go to Venice.
Go to Mars, yeah.
But, so Zamir, what did Andy write us for this year?
Okay, so there is a term that Amazon use called FCF. Yeah?
What does FCF stand for, Zamir?
Free cash flow.
Free cash flow. That means just the amount of cash they got sitting around available to spend.
Yeah, and Amazon normally use this as a really key metric that they tell investors about to show how strong their performance is.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is it actually gets mentioned in the double figures in this letter, but not because the number is really high. It's because it's really low.
Compared to usual, right?
Compared to usual. Okay,
there's shrinkage. I've been swimming in the SE.
Let's just put it into kind of perspective, right?
Yeah.
It is now down to, other than 2020 and 21, whenever COVID hit, it hasn't been this low since 2016. So for 10 years.
Yeah.
And the thing is, last year, it was higher than at any other point ever before.
So they had a massive war chest, essentially.
And he's just gone and spent it.
All right.
So it's dropped from roughly 38 billion to 11.
Okay, that's a massive drop.
But even more terrifying for the market is that it's anticipated, and this is why he's so focused on it. So two different analysts, Morgan Stanley, predict by this time next year it will be negative 17.
Oh, wow.
And Bank of America are predicting minus 28 billion.
Damn. Okay. That's huge.
Which is massive. Because Amazon has never bet that big on anything before.
Well, not this much cash. There's a lot of
with
cash.
this much cash. And we're going to get
and we're talking in the billions here,
We're
right?
talking
so
billions.
This is the billions. Yeah.
And the thing is, Amazon's revenue is growing. Their profitability is growing. So their free cash flow has or should be growing as well. And they're intending for it to grow over the next few years. And at the same time, they're predicting their free cash flow is going to reduce. And that's because of their significant $200 billion investment in AI.
Yeah. AI. So AI is just wiping out all of this cash. That's where they're throwing their money in. But where particularly in AI? Because there's this, are they talking about like what?
Right.
Like,
so we're going across. So that 200 billion is across the board, right? So we're talking land, building infrastructure, so data centers, building chips and chipsets, energy production. So across the board, that's their bet. 200 billion.
Wow.
Now they're backing this up with this letter is a strong business case for that investment. But a lot of the market are seeing this, and they're picking up on two key things. First of all, the fact that they're betting on a customer that's going to buy this. So they're saying, look, AWS, plenty of customers, AI is huge, as his letter is saying. But they're saying, well, that's what we're hearing from other companies like OpenAI and so forth. But that customer isn't guaranteed. So people have placed these orders. They're looking at OpenAI, who've placed these orders and going, well, hold on a second. When you look at their revenue generation, it doesn't match what they're planning to spend. And they don't see, there's a huge gap between these two. So they're questioning whether the market exists for this investment. And at the same time, they're saying, well, actually, Amazon, your core business, AWS, sure, you're growing, but you're actually losing market share. So Amazon's market share on AWS compared to Google and to Microsoft dropped 2% over the last 12 months. So they're losing market share on AWS. And they're saying that fundamentally, when it comes to online retail, Amazon have kind of maxed out in the US.
Yeah.
And another point Jassy makes is he points to international markets and other areas for their growth. But this is what's caused. So last month when they announced how much their free cash flow had been invested, they lost 10% of their share price.
Wow.
They're the least well-performing of the top 7 in terms of their share price over the last 18 months.
Doesn't Amazon own Anthropic though?
Amazon invested in Anthropic. It's their play.
Yeah. And so Anthropic is Claude.
Anthropic is Claude.
And Claude is killing it.
When you say killing it, so here's the problem, right?
Well,
so
it's the runaway one right at the moment.
It's a runaway one at the moment, but the revenue it generates is not aligned for this 200 billion investment. That's what the market's seeing. That's where their concern is. And you've got to remember, Amazon don't pay dividends, right?
Yeah.
And this play is likely to see them hit negative territory for a period of time.
Interesting. So they have to recoup all this investment through some AI investment, whether it's chips or data centers.
And do you know what he starts this letter actually mentioning a band from your home country, New Zealand, and he mentions one of their songs. It's called The Beths, and he uses some of their lyrics and sports metaphors to explain that things do not move in a straight line.
Yeah.
They move up and down. This entire letter talks about the fact that things are going to be volatile over the coming years, and they expect them to be volatile while spending this much money. But he's saying that he believes it is such AI offers such a potential inflection, it cannot be ignored by Amazon.
Yeah. And you reckon this is why they're laying off all the staff? Because obviously you keep hearing about all these staff that are kind of getting laid off. This is linked, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he mentions it in his letter.
Massive play.
Interestingly, the way he does it is in a way that. So we remember last year we picked up on this point that Amazon say that they work similar to a startup mentality. Yeah. And Jassy's point in this letter, I kind of cuts a little bit, but he basically says, by stripping out a whole load of middle management, they're able to operate more like a startup.
Like a startup.
Yeah. Puts them back into that. So he puts that as a positive for them. But yeah, you're right. They've cut a huge amount of cost. And this is where it turns around and suddenly becomes much more relevant to sellers. Because if you actually look at what they've been focusing on, so you could say that stripping out middle management has an impact. We know when it comes to cases and case management, AI has been employed more and more, and the response or the outcome of it has not been better. Which affects sellers.
Good. Yeah.
But also, we know that they're now, so a couple of things. You know how a lot of brands are probably experiencing Amazon holding on or deferring the payments, that 7-day payout?
Yeah.
That's cash flow management for Amazon.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
so
why
we might
stretching. We're funding it for them.
We might be seeing more of that coming over the coming years, right? So it may stretch beyond 7 days, especially if Amazon goes into negative free cash flow next year. They're going to need cash. And a very easy way for them to do that is to use our cash. Just hold onto it for a little bit longer. If you think about when it comes to reimbursements, again, they've reduced
that window. Yeah, it made it much harder to get money back.
Right?
Interesting.
The other thing they've been doing, pushing up their fees.
But surely we're not going to be funding. There's no way sellers can fund that much of it, right? I mean, at most, what percentage of that huge amount are we really going to be able to cover? I think it's relatively small.
Well, overall, you're looking at, so Amazon there are a couple of really interesting numbers that have released. So their retail business is approaching $600 billion in top line revenue. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a really interesting numbers. They've never really separated that out for us before. So we know that that's sitting there. Their year on year, they moved from $638 billion to $717 billion.
Wow.
And we know that includes AWS and everything there. So you're right, 200 billion is a huge chunk of that, especially when you think the play is probably over the next 4 or 5 years. Just on one play.
Yeah.
But there are other areas that he's looking. So they're saying that they are claiming, or he has claimed in this letter, they are now the second largest grocer in the US.
After Walmart.
Okay.
Who's number 3?
He didn't actually mention number 3. He just pointed out that they were number 2.
Okay.
And what's really interesting is he's suggesting they're leaning into grocery more. Now, we know that they've been closing stores down, physical stores, but he says that that's actually going to expand again. But we know that grocery is actually a low margin business.
Yeah.
They're leaning into, interestingly, and he picks out the UAE and India for this, their Now product. So this is a product where they can deliver within 20 minutes. And saying that they are now going to run this and they're going to expand this out in the US and in Europe as well. So these are products that can be delivered within 20 minutes. And there's some really interesting numbers he's kind of put onto that. Between them and the other area, they're what they call Prime Air. So this is their drone delivery side.
Yeah.
Again, the reason he's pushing on there, so grocery opens up a segment that they haven't been that dominant in, and he's suggesting that there's room for them to grow. This is coming back at, I think, people who have said have pointed out there isn't room for Amazon to grow, and what he's saying as well, actually, there is room for us to grow because we can grow more in grocery, particularly in the 20-minute delivery sphere, and then they're saying that actually, when it comes to online, there is a limitation that's holding people back, and that's technology. And so he's leaned into Project Leo, which is the low Earth orbiting satellites, saying, okay, so this is going to bring on more consumers, and then using Prime Air drones to deliver packages to more rural areas. And he's saying 1 billion packages additionally per year in the US alone.
Wow, it's insane.
Through drone delivery in those rural areas.
Wow, that was quite a letter Andy's written to you. No doubt penned with a lot of love. Key takeaways as sellers? What would you say?
Well, I think one of the things we have to realize is that we're hedged on this as much. If your revenue is coming from Amazon, you're in on this bet as much as Amazon are. The question is and his point is, AI is not a standalone initiative. It's a multiplier. By putting it into the business, this is going to make the business more efficient, more effective across the board. Do we agree? Do we think that's going to happen? We're betting our businesses on it if we're selling on Amazon. You're selling on Amazon. How do you feel about it? You're in the grocery market.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're going to be, I think it's interesting. There's a lot of money to be throwing at AI and data centers, but I guess what they're really concerned about is falling behind the competition, I guess. The amount of money that the competition's spending on this stuff.
I think there are two parts in that, right? Because you're right. From an open AI perspective, they're worried about falling behind. But when it comes to other online retailers, they're way ahead. So how much does their core business actually need? I think this is what a lot of the criticism is going to come at them, is that they don't actually have to. Do you have to do this play? You could do an Apple on this, right? So Apple are going, actually, you know what? We're not going to invest in AI hugely. We're going to let other companies take that risk, and we'll just take the best product and integrate it.
And we'll copy it, yeah.
Or integrate it. They're literally buying it and they'll integrate it into their solutions. Amazon could have done the same thing. Yeah,
but I think Amazon's that kind of like company that kind of takes these big bets and tries to kind of stay ahead with different things. AWS being an example.
But what about the old adage about flying too close to the sun? Could this be that step?
Maybe. But I don't know. Amazon has so much equity in just their .com.uk platform. There's so much equity in that Prime brand. I don't see people changing that too quickly.
You know what's really interesting? Do you know every single letter over the last 15 years has strongly mentioned marketplace sellers being a core part of Amazon's philosophy on how they're going to grow sales?
And didn't this year.
They're not mentioned once in the letter.
Wow, interesting. Okay.
It's a really glaring absence. And I wonder how much that's to do with the fact that if there's some negative publicity that comes out on that, they don't want to be aligned with the fact that that is a core part. Or could you just say that marketplace sellers these days are actually just part of the infrastructure? Everyone knows that now, so it doesn't set us apart. But the first letter I can remember in recent times that has not mentioned how important marketplace sellers are to their strategy.
To the whole business.
This entire letter is insanely defensive in the way it's been written. When you read it from the beginning to end, if
They're
you
trying to protect
consider
the share price. You mentioned they dropped by like 10%. So the whole thing is just to protect the share price.
They dropped. I mean, they regained some of that, but they're still down. They're low, and the overall sentiment in the market seems to be relatively down on their investment. And so I think if you read this letter, it's been really cleverly constructed. That if you're not aware of this, it doesn't draw your awareness to it. Right? If you read this, you would think AWS is doing amazing because it talks about how much growth they've had, but it doesn't put that in the context of how much the rest of the market's growing and how they're actually losing market share. So if you read this solely on its own in isolation, it probably sounds quite inspiring and innovative and cutting edge. But I think when you take it in the context of what the market's been saying about them, it's extraordinarily defensive. And it highlights how much risk Amazon are actually taking and playing with over the coming years. There is one other thing I would point out as a seller I would be aware of, because there is one huge cash cow as well as AWS that's sitting there that generates a ton of profitability and free cash flow for Amazon, and that's advertising.
Yeah.
And so I would say that their intention, and that would, again, advertising revenue normally mentioned, hasn't been mentioned here. And that kind of worries me slightly. It's like, okay, what are they planning to do with that revenue now? How much are they going to lean into that and drive that
to fund
up
the rest of the business?
to fund the rest of this? I mean, they've cut staff.
So more ad slots.
I suspect that's what we will probably see. More ad slots appearing. Yeah, less space given to organic.
Well, that was a riveting letter from our man Andy, and I'm glad it gave you so much love. Just not enough love. He didn't mention sellers enough, but
At all.
maybe in next year's letter, you'll never know.
Question for you guys. I have a question, and we can keep this in or we can leave it out depending on what you think of the question. But we've established that you guys are invested into Amazon because of the business that we run and the brands that we work with. Naturally, are invested into Amazon's success. But are you invested in Amazon as a shareholder?
I am not invested in Amazon as a shareholder. Are you invested in Amazon as a shareholder?
I'm not invested in Amazon as a shareholder, mainly because I think through our businesses, we've probably exposed enough to Amazon. And so my investments tend to be more hedged. True. Having said that, if we had been invested in Amazon, we'd probably have seen we would have seen a very good return over the years. They're still growing. Their share price is increasing. So,
all right. Well, if you're invested in Amazon, and if you're not, and if you are selling on Amazon, or if you're not, let us know your thoughts. I'd love to know what you think about this letter from our man Andy. And we will catch you on the next one. One love.
Peace out. One love.